Hi guys, it is another mild day here in Columbus, Ohio, and we're already into February of 2020. I wanted to do a video kind of updating my take on supplementation for vegans, and I'll just start off the top with the one that is most commonly talked about, that being B12. And yes, vegans should, bottom line is they should take a B12 supplement. Personally, I've actually, as an experiment, I've been chopping my pills into little pieces. So I'm only taking about a tenth of a B12 tablet per day. And I just had my level checked and it's well within the normal range. I've been doing that for a couple years. If one bottle of B12 is literally, that's enough for an entire lifetime. So you could share it with your friends. I don't know what the shelf life is, but anyway. And I also wanted to throw out there that B12, it's not just from animal sources. They've recently discovered that there's B12 in duckweed, which is actually pretty widely distributed across the planet. And the researchers have also found B12 in natural water sources. So if industrial civilization collapses, or maybe I should say when it collapses, there are B12 sources out there. But for now, just take the pill. You probably don't need a shot or anything like that, as some people have suggested that you'll need a B12 shot. So enough on that one. Vitamin D, which is actually a hormone. And last year I started scaling way back on my supplementation of vitamin D. So for the last 6 months or so, I've only been taking about one tablet or one capsule per month, and each capsule's 10,000 IU. And Columbus, Ohio, I haven't had any sun since October, and I just had my hydroxy 25 test, and that was last week, I think, and it came in at 36, which appears to be plenty adequate. So at least in my case, I don't even know that I need to take vitamin D, and I'm not a big sun worshiper. I get some incidental sun in the summer, but actually I try to avoid it to a pretty big extent. Bottom line is, you probably, if you're supplementing, you probably don't need to supplement as much as you are, and it's probably a good idea to get a hydroxy 25 test now and then. And I don't know if there's a massive amount of study on this, the vitamin D levels, but there are some things that suggest you can overdo it with the vitamin D, and at a certain point, it may be doing more harm than good. And there seems to be very little evidence that a level above, say, 20 or 30 is beneficial. Another one that's often talked about is the DHA omega-3. And for those of you who don't know, there are different kinds of omega-3s. The plant foods like flaxseed have lots of the short chain omega-3s in it, which are converted to longer chain omega-3s, EPA and DHA. But they're not converted. It's a fairly low conversion rate, which is probably okay. And they're also preformed DHA long chain omega-3s, and the only plant source of that would be basically algae. And they kind of condense the algae oil out of it and put it in a capsule. And I've been taking some of that. I think officially Michael Greger recommends you take that as kind of insurance. Now my plan is to, once I run out, is to quit taking it and go a while and see how you can get your DHA level tested. So I may wait a couple years and see how that's doing. I think most likely, if you have a reasonable. You get a decent amount of the short chain omega-3s like in flaxseed, and you have a reasonable omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in your diet, you'll probably be just fine. The DHA, the long chain fatty acids, is very important in your brain health and your nervous system, but those tissues are pretty stationary. They're not really turning over, so you don't really need a huge amount of it. So I think if you have a good omega-6 to 3 ratio, and you have a good microbiome in your intestinal tract, most likely you'll be good. But again, maybe you ought to get a test every great once in a while. It's probably not something you need to get tested really frequently. Now, one that is really barely talked about is iodine, and it's really kind of hard to say how much iodine you're getting. It's not really found in animal foods either. Pretty much all the sources come from the ocean. And well, there's iodine in milk, but the only reason there's iodine in milk is they use iodine to cleanse off the manure from the cow teats. So that's pretty appetizing. But if you don't want to drink milk, you can, and you're worried about iodine, you can get, well, basically you can take kelp. You can either take it in the form of, they have those nori sheets or whatever. But I personally take a capsule. It's just a condensed kelp capsule. And it should be a little more accurate as far as the amount of iodine. And I'm not taking a huge dose, probably 1,000 or so micrograms per week. And I have had my thyroid function tested. That was a couple years ago. Everything seemed fine. So I guess I'll just keep doing that since it seems to be working. It could well be that I don't need it, but it doesn't seem to be doing any harm. And it's not a particularly expensive supplement either. So that's really all the supplementing I do. I don't think you need, if you're eating whole food plant-based, it's very unlikely you need calcium or iron or zinc or any of those things. And yes, you can go overboard on that stuff. A lot of people think more is better, and it can have some negative consequences. So bottom line is, as they always say, well, vegans need tons of supplements. That is not my experience. It would appear likely that the only one I really need is B12, and it is exceedingly cheap, probably only a couple dollars a year. That's all I have for now.